Googled term that we were trying to answer is Korean beauty natural? And I guess it then really depends on what your definition of natural is. Is it the same as the definition was under the Korean legislative system that they're going to get rid of? Is it the same as, the Cosmos system? And I think the more broad question, if you are wondering about natural Korean beauty products and what that all means, is natural necessarily better? I think there is something that is called the natural fallacy, and that's basically the belief that things that are natural or that come from nature are inherently better or superior. But there are a lot of reasons why that's not necessarily the case, and that is even more so, I think, when it comes to our skincare. And I think the thing is, the bottom line is that the safety of an ingredient or a particular product often has nothing to do with whether that product is natural or not. For example, some synthetic ingredients can be safer than some natural ingredients. Like, if you want to take a really extreme example, think about poison. Like, poison, you can have natural poisons that are obviously very unsafe. It would depend on the dose that you're taking. But I think that there is also a tendency that I hear a lot of the time when people are talking about ingredients and products and things like that. And that is a tendency to conflate synthetic chemicals with harsh chemicals. So people will often say, oh, look, I want a product that is free from harsh chemicals. But synthetic and lab-grown chemicals are not necessarily harsh. Like, that just isn't, like, they aren't the same thing. So I'm not a cosmetic chemist. I don't pretend to be one, but I have had a lot to do with chemicals, particularly as an importer of products. So when you import beauty products to Australia, there is an entire regime that you have to comply with. The AICIS regime, and it is really, really complicated. It's a complicated system that importers need to comply with, and it basically meant that I needed to get my head around tens of thousands of different chemicals in order to be able to categorize everything and work out what our reporting obligations were. Did we need any additional documentation and all of those kind of things for the products that we were importing to Australia? So that was kind of a crash course in a lot of ingredients, and that is why I understand an inky list, a formula list, probably better than a lay person. The other thing is that now at this point, I've overseen the product development of lots of different personal care products for our brands, for other brands that we've worked with. So I kind of have a working understanding of how this all works, even though I myself am not a chemist. So I think a couple of things I have found to be true in my time sort of doing this, and that is that you are not always going to be working with the best ingredients when you are restricted to natural ingredients. And that is because many natural ingredients are not necessarily as effective as the synthetic ones. You are also going to have fewer options if you are formulating solely with natural ingredients. So basically, two issues there. There are less options and they don't always work as well. So, the Inky dictionary lists about 22,000 roughly different chemicals that can be used in cosmetics, but only a fraction of those are actually considered natural. So that is an issue in general, is having a lot less options, a lot less products that you can actually work with. The other big one that you will see played out from time to time, with specific brands, natural brands, clean beauty brands, that will get scandals and things like that from time to time, is usually to do with issues with preservation. So natural ingredients are more prone to contamination than synthetic ingredients, and that is because at their base level, preservatives are designed to prevent microbial growth in products. So issues with mold and things like that you will see crop up from time to time with certain clean beauty brands, natural beauty brands. A lot of the time that is because they had a preservation system that was lacking, that was not quite up to scratch. So that can be a problem with natural formulation and natural ingredients. The other big one that I I myself have quite a big problem with, because of my history as a distributor and now as a brand owner, is short shelf life. So because of the aforementioned problems with preservatives, a lot of natural beauty products actually have very short shelf lives, and that can cause a whole range of different problems. For one, when you're distributing products that have a really short shelf life, it just doesn't give you a whole lot of time to manufacture the product, get it on a boat, send it to where it's going to be sent, get it on shelves, and then sell it before the time runs out on the product. So that's not great. The other thing is, because they have a shorter shelf life, it can actually end up that you are creating products that are in the long term worse for the environment, because it leads to more waste. If products are expiring and going off on the shelf, or they are filled with mold because they're not properly preserved, then that just leads to a whole lot of products going in the bin, going into landfill, and causing more waste. And I think a lot of people, when they think of natural beauty, and one of the reasons that they are attracted to it is because they also want to, at some base level, do the right thing by the environment. So that can kind of be a double-edged sword. If you are formulating with all of these, natural ingredients that are going to go off quicker, it can actually lead itself to being worse for the environment in the long term when you look at the whole life cycle of the product. So that's something that not a lot of natural beauty brands necessarily want to have a conversation around, but I have run into that issue many times with certain Korean beauty brands that, were using, for example, this is one product I can happily talk about because it no longer it now contains a proper preservation system. But I remember once upon a time, the Innisfree pore clay mask, that product had a really, really short period after opening that you could use it. I'm going to say off the top of my head, it was maybe 3 months. And, we used to get a lot of complaints from people saying that they had to throw out, in inverted commas, a perfectly good product because it had gone off before they could use it all up. Like, that's not ideal either. So I know, Innisfree, that used to be one of the linchpins of their whole marketing, for their brand, was natural beauty from Jeju Island. And as they grew and expanded, particularly overseas, it's not that they've moved away from that, but I have noticed that their formulation principles and standards have evolved and changed so that it is a lot easier for them to distribute their products internationally and have longer shelf lives and longer periods after opening. Because when you are exporting products, you need time to do all of those kind of things. By the time you get the products on a ship and then ship it to where it's going to be, you've already lost sometimes months from the product, being finalized at the cosmetic manufacturers, and then the period where it actually gets onto a shelf. So if you've already lost months and the product only had, a year or 2 years to run, like, that's also not ideal. So that is another issue with natural beauty products that I myself have experienced just in my time distributing products. The other thing is that a lot of the time, if you have like this one natural ingredient that is like the key ingredient in your product, the supply will often be inconsistent. And that's for obvious reasons. You need to rely on crops. Just like in farming, if a particular crop has a bad year, you're kind of out of luck. And there's a product that I can remember off the top of my head that ran into this exact problem. And this was the rose cleansing stick that was all the rage back in the day. And it was relying on natural rose petals in the formula. And I think what ended up happening, and one of the key reasons that the brand discontinued this viral product, they could not keep it on the shelves. It was sold out all the time. Everyone wanted to get their hands on it. It was like the product of the mid 2010s. Like, people were obsessed with it, and they ended up discontinuing it. And a big part of the reason, or so I heard, was that they could not get a consistent supply of rose petals to put in this cleansing stick that was all about the rose petals in the cleansing stick. So the supply of natural ingredients is going to be inconsistent. There are going to be differences, variations in the quality of a particular, crop and things like that. So that can be another issue, and why some brands, don't necessarily want to overly rely on natural ingredients in their products as well. The other big thing that I think is really important to take into account a lot of the times people will be saying, I want to use natural products because they are better for your skin, right? But one study actually found that most all natural products contain ingredients that can trigger contact dermatitis. So in this particular study, the researchers found that 94.2% of all natural products contained at least one contact allergen, and 89.5% of them contained one or more contact allergens. So what that means is that just because an ingredient is natural, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to be compatible with your skin. So essential oils are a big one that I can think of. Herbal extracts, they're not always necessarily the most skin friendly. Yes, they're natural. They're not synthetic. So you can write on your product that it doesn't contain synthetic fragrances or artificial fragrances. But for a lot of people, essential oils are a big trigger. They can cause irritation, discomfort, redness, all of those kind of things. So I think that just goes to show that if you were looking for natural products or going natural in order to do the right thing by your skin, it's not necessarily the case that you can avoid issues like dermatitis just because you're using all natural products. And I think at the end of the day, consumers want products that work. So if a product is natural or all natural or free from synthetics, but it doesn't actually work, or it has a really short shelf life, or it's going to grow mold, or, all of these kind of different things, is that necessarily better than using products that have synthetic ingredients in them as well? Now, that's a very personal choice. And I'm not trying to necessarily dissuade anyone one way or the other, more just to present, a more nuanced discussion about some of the reasons why it's not as simple as all natural. And it's certainly not an easy question to answer, particularly when it comes to Korean beauty or any beauty products, whether, you just cannot answer the question, is Korean beauty natural, in any kind of a simplistic way, particularly because now that they are doing away with the regime, there is not going to be this certification standard that all brands need to manufacture to in order to claim natural certification. So look, I just thought that was an interesting question because there are so many different parts that go into that. Like, it's really, look, we've been talking about it for nearly half an hour. I don't think it's necessarily the easiest question to answer. Are there beauty brands in Korea that is their core philosophy, that they want to create natural cosmetics? Yes, there are. And there were, as we discussed, 34 or so products from between 2019 to 2021 that actually did carry this mark of natural Korean beauty products. Now, I had a look at what some of them were. And some of them were, these are not exactly viral products. One of them was called the Hwangjinmo Coconut Hair Loss Soap. And that was a very natural looking soap that was supposed to prevent hair loss. There was another one from a line actually from a brand called Swanee Cocoa that was black barley cream and toner. And from what I could see, it looks like they've been discontinued altogether. So I don't think a lot of these products are the kind of products that you are seeing doing the rounds on social media necessarily. They're not necessarily the kind of products that are going to have millions of sales. In fact, they're probably not even the kind of products that you would necessarily recognize, but there are some brands out there that is really important to them. And I have no doubt that there will be some Korean beauty brands that will go through this Cosmos certification process once the domestic Korean regime is done away with. But, it's an interesting topic to have a little bit of a chat about. And I do see it come up a lot. Particularly around, bad ingredients, or what ingredients are good and bad, and all of these ranking apps and things like that. And I think that, people want simple answers to a question that is just not actually that simple to answer. And I think a lot of the apps that are doing the rounds that rank ingredients and rate them and all of those things, they're trying to just simplify something that is just not that easy. And that's why a lot of people in the scientific community have an issue with them, because they're like, yeah, but you can't just, answer it that bluntly, because so many other things go into determining whether something is safe. And, you know, like it's a far more nuanced discussion than that. So look, just a couple of things to have a think about if you were one of the people that was Googling this question. It's a whole to do. So let me know if you have enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy this kind of format. We can answer. There are plenty more of the most Googled questions out there in Korean beauty that we can answer, and I'm happy to do that with you. Come and find me and let me know what you want to hear. Until next time, I will see you on Style Story and Jellico.